When Shohei Ohtani walked into the press conference room, cameras immediately began to click in rapid succession. The air was thick with anticipation. For the first time since the Dodgers' dramatic postseason advancement, Ohtani was ready to address the media, and what unfolded in those 17 minutes was far more revealing than most expected. He appeared calm, poised, and deliberate, but underneath that quiet control, something deeper seemed to be brewing. At first glance, it was a typical athlete's post-game conference. Reporters lined up, microphones were extended, and the spotlight was blinding. But from the very first sentence, Ohtani's tone was different. He began by saying, "As I said earlier," a phrase he would go on to repeat multiple times throughout the session. It wasn't just a linguistic habit, it was a signal. A way of reminding everyone that he had already set his boundaries, that he would not be dragged into unnecessary speculation or gossip. In professional sports, especially in MLB where media scrutiny is relentless, language can be as strategic as a 100-mile-per-hour fastball. Ohtani's repeated use of, "as I said earlier," wasn't accidental. It was a wall, a verbal defense mechanism. Every time a reporter tried to steer the conversation towards sensitive topics, his private life, his relationship with teammates, or his recent sponsorship issues, he calmly deflected with those 5 words. As I said earlier, he began once more when asked about the alleged internal tensions in the Dodgers clubhouse. His expression didn't change. His voice stayed steady. The message was clear: he wasn't going to fuel the fire. This wasn't a man dodging the truth, it was a man protecting it. What fascinated many in the room was how Ohtani balanced restraint with sincerity. There was no arrogance, no dismissiveness. Instead, there was precision. Every word seemed to be measured. He wasn't just answering questions, he was controlling the narrative. Ohtani's demeanor reflected a man who understands the weight of his words. Every syllable carries global attention, in Japan, in America, and across the baseball world. That awareness was visible in the way he paused between thoughts, occasionally glancing down before answering, as if to ensure nothing he said could be twisted or misinterpreted. The forbidden words that Ohtani avoided, such as injury, conflict, pressure, or rumor, were not lost on the journalists present. They knew what they wanted, a headline. But Ohtani knew what he wanted even more: control. Throughout the 17 minutes, he spoke about the team's progress, the unity in the dugout, and the gratitude he felt toward fans who had supported him through both triumphs and trials. He mentioned how this season had been one of the most challenging of his career, but quickly followed with, "As I said earlier, it's part of the process." The repetition was rhythmic, almost like a mantra. Behind that repetition, though, was a man aware of the unseen pressures, the expectations from 2 nations, the legacy of his dual-role performance, and the scrutiny of his every decision. For someone who dominates on both sides of the ball, he has learned to play defense off the field just as skillfully. Observers noted that even when questions became uncomfortably personal, particularly regarding his relationship with certain players or his rumored off-field disputes, Ohtani never flinched. Instead, he'd respond with a calm, "As I said earlier, my focus is on helping the team win." It became his shield, his subtle rebellion against media intrusion. One journalist, clearly frustrated by the lack of headline material, asked bluntly if Ohtani was hiding something. The room grew tense. Ohtani's expression remained neutral. "I have nothing to hide," he replied. "As I said earlier, everything I do is for the team." That moment drew quiet respect. The restraint was impressive. Many athletes, cornered by relentless questioning, might have snapped. Ohtani didn't. His composure showed the emotional maturity that defines him not just as a player but as a global ambassador for the sport. Fans watching the press conference online began to flood social media with comments. "He's so calm under pressure," one fan wrote. "Ohtani's discipline is next level," said another. But some also sensed something else, a quiet frustration behind the calm eyes. Was he tired of being misunderstood? Possibly. Was he weary of having to explain himself in 2 languages, across 2 cultures? Almost certainly. The phrase, "as I said earlier," may have been polite repetition, but it also carried exhaustion, a hint that he's had to defend his integrity far too often. For Japanese fans, this moment echoed something deeper in their culture: the concept of gammon, enduring with dignity. Ohtani's behavior embodied it perfectly. No matter how invasive the question, he endured. No matter how eager the press was for a spark, he stayed cool. In the English-speaking media, however, the reaction was split. Some called the conference robotic, claiming Ohtani revealed nothing new. Others praised his professionalism and grace under pressure. But one truth stood out. Ohtani had, intentionally or not, set a new standard for how modern athletes handle the spotlight. He didn't lash out. He didn't retreat. He simply redirected the conversation to what truly mattered: performance, teamwork, and respect. In doing so, he showed that silence, when used wisely, can be more powerful than any statement. As the press conference went on, the repetition of his forbidden phrase became almost hypnotic. As I said earlier, as I mentioned before, like I've already said. Each time, it subtly reminded everyone that Ohtani wasn't there to entertain controversy. He was there to reaffirm his focus. Some fans later joked that he should trademark the phrase, that it had become part of his brand. But others recognized the seriousness beneath the humor. For Ohtani, it wasn't about catchphrases. It was about survival in a world where every word can be magnified, twisted, and weaponized. When asked about his two-way performance and the ongoing question of whether he would continue pitching next season, Ohtani paused for a few seconds. Then, softly, he said, "As I said earlier, I'll do what helps the team most." That statement, simple, humble, and firm, summed up everything about his approach. As the press conference neared its end, one could feel the tension slowly dissolve. Reporters realized they weren't going to break him. He had turned what could have been a volatile interrogation into a masterclass in composure. When Ohtani finally stood up, bowing slightly before leaving the podium, the room erupted into a storm of camera shutters. Even then, he didn't hurry. He walked away quietly, leaving behind a silence that was almost profound. In those 17 minutes, Ohtani had shown the world that real strength isn't in loudness, but in restraint. That true leadership sometimes means saying less, not more. Fans outside the stadium later gathered to talk about what they'd just seen. Some were moved, some confused. But nearly everyone agreed, Ohtani wasn't just protecting himself. He was protecting something larger: the purity of the game, the integrity of his image, and the respect between athlete and audience. As clips of the press conference spread across the internet, phrases like "forbidden words" began trending. Analysts dissected every sentence, every pause, trying to find hidden meaning. Yet perhaps the real message was the simplest one: that Ohtani, in his quiet way, had drawn a line between his public and private self, and dared the world to respect it. The press conference may have lasted only 17 minutes, but its impact will last far longer. It was a glimpse into the mindset of a man who carries enormous pressure with grace. Shohei Ohtani didn't just avoid the forbidden words, he redefined what it means to speak carefully in an era of overexposure. Every repetition of, "as I said earlier," wasn't just an answer. It was a reminder that even in a world desperate for drama, there's still power in dignity. He left the room quietly, but his silence spoke volumes. It was the sound of a superstar who refuses to let noise dictate his story, a story that continues, one calm word at a time.